Welcome along to the Cardiff City phone-in. We've got a couple of all-stars on the show tonight. Quite an interesting one, actually, because we got our first ever guest all the way from the Falklands, Steve Thomas. Thanks, Steve, for hopefully that'll work for the show tonight. Great to chat to you tonight.
Fingers crossed. Thank you very much, Steve. Thank you for having me.
And a very good effort taking the Cardiff City shirt out there to the Falklands with you, and it's nice to see. Yeah.
Absolutely. Thanks very much. Thanks very much.
And Ali Yassine, great to have Ali back on the show. Hi, Ali.
Hi, Steve. Great to be here. Thanks for the invite.
Thanks for coming on. We bumped into each other outside a match recently. You said you're in with me with the Nutters, I think was your line. So,
Yeah.
and you were right. I want to chat to you about some of your days doing what you did at the club, because people obviously remember you very well, actually. So there's quite a lot to talk about. I didn't actually realize, Ali, until tonight, stupidly, I didn't even realize you'd put those books out, because there's a lot out there about there, isn't it?
The books
Yeah, about you and your kind of
Oh
football
yeah,
and
yeah. I
City and
mean
all that. Yeah.
that was a bit of an accident, to be totally honest.
Okay.
It was a request from the Welsh government originally to try to get more young men to read, and so they were looking for
Oh,
various subject matters, and they chose football. So they had a number of footballers writing short stories, and they asked me to join in, and mine was in Welsh, and it really took off. kind of. So they asked me to do an English version, and it was kind of a bit of an accident, but a nice kind of accident.
yeah. Well, we'll come back to that, because obviously there was a few things to discuss in that. Have you been following the Wales matches?
Yes and no. Kind of yes, from the watching the youngsters develop kind of thing. But I've got a 14-year-old, almost 15-year-old son
Hmm.
who watches Cardiff City and Wales forensically and bores me to death with absolutely every stat you can imagine. So I kind of slightly switch off now.
Oh, fair enough. Fair enough.
And also, as you well know, when you've been on the tannoy and you're constantly full of information you're handing over to people, like about the nature of the squad, who's the goal scorers, that kind of thing. Um, it was kind of my every week having to collect this information. So now it's kind of nice not to have to, and let somebody else. It's a nice break. So it's quite funny watching my son kind of get into all of that.
Of course, you took over from me.
Yeah,
You
that's
took
right. Yeah.
immediately from me, which a lot of people don't know. I mean, I was there and I was gone. I didn't have the same presence as you, but make the same
Oh, you
impact.
did. You did. I mean, the thing is, I
Enjoyed
mean,
it though.
I mean, we both came around a time when there was great change, wasn't it? I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
and new things were happening, and new technologies were being used, and kind of thing. And you kind of went your own way anyway, didn't you? I mean, I
Mm.
didn't ever see you ever just staying as a. You were also, a radio presenter, producer. Kind of, you weren't going to stay as a lonely tannoy announcer at
Uh,
Cardiff City.
I'm sure we both love doing it.
Yeah, no, absolutely,
You know.
absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. Um, Steve, I'll come back. There's loads to talk about with Ali on that, obviously. Steve, so how is the Cardiff City Supporters Club going in the Falklands? Is it growing?
Well, I've got a fantastic membership of one at the moment. I bumped into a few fans of other teams. There's very much like a transitional kind of occupation down here. Sorry, population down here with the people coming down here to do work. The 18-hour military flight to get here was quite an experience, and I've got that to look forward to get back for the weekend. Hopefully, I won't be missing. Well, I'll be out of the country for any Cardiff City games if the flights are on time. But yeah, I was able to follow the Wales game on an Argentinian. Not, I say Argentinian very quietly in these parts, obviously. But I was able to follow the game on an Argentinian sports channel. There was chopping between the different European games on the whatever night it was, Friday night, wasn't it?
So years ago, Steve, I was on holiday in I think it was south of France, or France or Spain or wherever. I ended up in this crazy place in the middle of nowhere, and I was on this railway station, and I can't remember the name of the place, maybe towards Andorra, where I can't remember. And it just happened. It was around about that time, if you know what I mean. and there was an Argentinian guy on the station, you know.
Yeah.
And I realized he was Argentinian, and I said, "Oh, the Falklands." He said, "No, no, Malvinas." We just shook hands. Said, "Yeah, fair enough." What you like, you know? I'm not going to argue with you.
You don't use the M word here. For sure.
No. But you know, blimey, you know, crack on, you know, call it what you like. You know, I'm not going to argue with you. Um, but it's interesting because the history of where you're at is sort of, you know, obviously
Yeah.
significant. What's it just out of
Yeah.
interest? So, what's it like as an experience to be there? You know, what's the kind of? It must be a wild nightlife out there, I'd imagine.
Well, it isn't such a mild and white nightlife, but there's tremendous wildlife. You know, I've been to penguin colonies, I've been to seal colonies, and
Fantastic.
it's just, you know, you can get really close to them. I'll be boring everybody with the photos on Facebook when I get back, but yeah, it's been tremendous, and also the Wi-Fi here, as you can see on here, is pretty good. So I've been able to keep in touch and follow what was happening in the Wales game, follow what's happening on a Cardiff City front as well. So yeah, I'll be back in the UK, hopefully in time for the weekend. I won't be able to go to Preston, but I will be resuming my watching again next week.
Steve, what did you see the Armenia game? You saw the Armenia game. You said you did through Argentina.
Yeah,
So,
I saw. Yeah.
what was your take on it then?
I think at the end, to be fair, I think Wales quite lucky to get away with the
They
point.
got a
To be honest,
second,
I
didn't
thought
they?
yeah, a couple of really good chances for Armenia.
Mm.
Yeah, they had the chances, but I think it was very disappointing. But of course, they say, I've said it on here before, obviously, that the you can live with the despair is the hope that kills you. Because obviously, if results don't go for us tomorrow night, there's still the playoff route. So it's still the possibility that we will get to Germany, but it's it's a long drawn out process to see whether we will actually get to the finals.
And Ali, there's a lot of criticism. You know, the manager always gets it, really, but
Yeah.
you know, Rob Page was kind of vilified after the game. I don't know. I know you saw some of it, I guess. Did you?
Yeah. I watched most of the game, you know, but
Yeah.
funny enough, I was thinking about Rob Page and thinking he's done a great job for Wales. Do you know what I mean? And I was thinking, will this have been his last campaign anyway? And would he want to go into club management of some sort? Do you know what I mean? Because I think he's earned he's shown what he could do, and it may well, you know, it is the time possibly to hand over the mantle to somebody else. What I am heartened by is we do have quality other than Bale and Ramsey, and there is potential there, you know, for the future. I wasn't at all hopeful, I have to be honest, when Bale retired that we had anything, you know. Disappointed, you know, by some of the results in this campaign, but I guess I feel like back in the old days where I prioritised City over Wales, and you know the counterbalance here, I was expecting City to be in a relegation fight this year, and it's the opposite of what I was expecting. So it's kind of like counterintuitive to a certain extent, because I was expecting Wales still to do well rather than the other way. So, you know, but I'm made up, say, for Scotland though, you know, because I've watched them, you know, throughout the campaign and thought, you know, they deserve to be there, you know. So you know, I still have hope that we'll get there, but even if we do get there, it's just by the skin of our teeth, isn't it? You know, and I think we've got a squad very much in development at the moment.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit like Cardiff City at the moment until January comes along. You know, when Wales put out their stronger side, it you know, starting 11's pretty good, but there's not enough really, you know, in reserve, is there really?
No, and that's it basically, you know. But I mean, who'd have thought Armenia would have given, you know, a performance?
They played well, didn't they?
Yeah, and to beat us, was it 4-2 at home? You know, so you know, I think this idea that European nations are way ahead of everybody else is just nonsense. You know, I mean, look at Turkey beating Germany in Germany 3-2. You know, in a friendly the other night, and we've got to face them tomorrow night. You know, and I'm thinking.
Yeah, it's disappointing.
I think it's no guarantee. I think that that Croatia will beat Armenia, Because
No.
who'd have thought you'd pick up on what Ali said there? Pick up what Ali said there. I think that the biggest disappointments have been the results against Armenia, but actually Armenia played really well in Cardiff against us. And then I think they probably deserve, from what I could see, they probably deserve to win the game the other night as well. So again, I thought Croatia, whilst it was a fantastic result, and I remember putting the comment on here, Steve, that I thought it was the poorest Croatia team I'd ever seen. But then of course we've still got to beat Turkey, which is, as Ali said, after the result against Germany, is not going to be an easy task at all.
But I mean, that could be just what we needed. Like, maybe they'll come here, with too much confidence. But it is. I mean, there is the Cardiff City Stadium factor as well. And the 12th man kind of thing of our crowd, and you just never know. But I think we're always been destined to be the playoff kind of team, on a national level. I mean, I always laugh with my son. I say, God, you know nothing when it comes down to supporting Wales at an international level. We were there. I was there when Paul Bowden missed his penalty, and I was there. All those games where we were just hammered. Having people like Vinnie Jones representing us, and Bobby Gould as our manager. And I think so. Anything that's come since Giggs was manager, or Mark Hughes, and that development since then has been a bonus. The only thing I'd say is that the way the Welsh squad is being developed is something of a little concern to me, because I think that we're not really looking for players in Wales, or to build the facilities in Wales to be able to get the elite level player. We're generally going after players who went through the English system or England's training system and were never going to play for England. And so we're scouting around the world looking for anybody with a Welsh surname and trying to find a link or whatever to get them to play for Wales, which might give us short-term success, but it doesn't do anything for grassroots football in Wales itself.
Sorry, carry on, Steve, because I'm having all kinds of tech issues here. Just really to rally for me. Sorry,
just all went quiet then. I thought, oh.
I thought, is it just me and you now, Ali?
I'm multitasking.
Okay,
I've had a
Steve.
massive Wi-Fi issue, but I'm trying to get around it. Sorry. Carry on, guys.
I think I'd agree with what you said there, Ali. We had a bit of a golden generation, of course, in 2016, which is stating the obvious a bit. But it is a slight concern about the way the players are coming through. As you said, there is talent there, as you said, Ali. Leaving aside Bale and Ramsey, but looking at it. A concern has always been that if we do have players who play for Premier League teams, I'm sorry, they don't seem to have that much first team action.
Yeah,
I think I saw a stat about the amount that Nico Williams has played this season. I mean, it's all very well to say these players should go out on loan, but they're contracted to the clubs that they're at, and it's up to them whether it's in their best interest to send them out. So I've got a concern about the amount of players we've got coming through from a Wales perspective who don't play at the highest level on a regular basis.
Yeah. Sorry, I think I'm okay now. I think I can crack on. That was an interesting one. I mean, when you're looking at the games, Steve, to some extent, sometimes with Wales, what Ali, I totally get what Ali says. I'm always Cardiff City first, Wales second, for sure, But there's players in that squad. I don't even know who they are. I don't know who they play for. It's just a bunch of names that I don't even know. But if you think about when, to look back to a Cardiff lad, John Toshak, when Toshak was in charge, he again got a lot of criticism, but I always think, Steve, that he should take a lot of credit because he's the one who turned football on his head in Wales and started to bring the youth through. We were really stuck in a rut, weren't we? Yeah,
absolutely.
I don't like it.
Entirely.
I have to be honest. I've met Toshak. I worked with him. I don't like him, but he was spot on.
What? I come back to you, Steve. Now, Ali, what out of interest, what don't you like about him?
I always remember. I was asked. Wales were training ahead of one of the matches at the Millennium Stadium. It was called back then, and I was asked I had a phone call and said, John Toshak wants to see you. And this was just after he was appointed. So,
Oh yeah.
So I turned up, and Roy Evans was there, and they were on the side of the pitch while the players were running through some training session, and I sort of walked up to him and I said, John, I'm Ali. I understand you want to see me. He goes, are you the bloke on the tannoy? And I said, yeah. He said, right, whatever you did for Mark Hughes, I want you to do the exact opposite. And
Wow.
I said, what do you mean? He said, I don't want any noise when you score. When we score, I don't even want it announced. I said, what do you mean? I've got to announce goals. He goes, well, the less we have anything of geeing up the crowd, the better, whatever. And I kind of looked at him in disbelief. And he turned away to walk away to his players, and Roy Evans was stood there. And Roy Evans just looked at me and said, see what he just told you? Ignore everything he said. Just do what you like.
Wow, what a fantastic story.
And Roy Evans, I love the man. He was like such a sensible bloke. He was like, he was the kind of counterweight to Tosh's abrasiveness. Because honestly, Tosh was a bloke who believes his own greatness, and it is bizarre when you meet people like that in life. I've met a few, but it is bizarre, that they're so confident in their own ability. And you often find they're the same type of people who, when they get it wrong, they won't accept responsibility for it either.
That's interesting. That what I've liked, it's funny because what you just said is totally different insight. I've never met him. I don't know him. I've watched him play for City. That's about it. But I kind of liked his forthright approach, and I kind of liked the way that he tried to shake things up. At that time, if which you remember as well as me. No offense to people of a certain age. I'm one myself, but there were a lot of people of a certain age when the stripy ties wandering around, and they were like running football in Wales, and we kind of needed to move a bit, didn't we?
Yeah. Oh no, I mean, in terms of development and what Tosh did to the Wales setup, he was absolutely spot on. He moved he really did push things forward. I'm just saying, from a social sort of point of view, you would find it very difficult to be a friend of Tosh, unless you grew up with him or you knew him kind of intimately, whereas Roy Evans was a really nice, easygoing bloke, that you could talk to, and Roy Evans didn't seem to judge anybody by what they did either. He judged people by the people he met, which is really nice.
Well, he's a Scouser, isn't he? He's a Scouser, is he, Roy Evans?
There was 2 incidents that happened. That happened, and then while I was there, I thought I might as well make myself useful and pull all the balls out of the stand from behind the goals, And so the keeper had walked away, and so I jumped onto the pitch, and what's his name? Sam, the former Swansea defender. What's his name now? Sam something. But basically, he was about 30 yards away. I said, come on, give me your best shot. in the goal. I think you need a defender. There's no way he's going to score from there. And he hit this ball, and I could see it coming. And then just about sort of 10 foot away from me, it just started moving from left to right. And then as I tried to get the save, it hit me directly in the face.
Then that'll teach you.
And I thought, I've never, ever challenged a professional footballer ever since.
Yeah, that's a nice story. I took one of the worst penalties ever in the history of Ninian, actually, during it was Jason's testimonial against George Wood. It was just appalling, So our job is to watch football, Ali.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. G people up, but not. Yeah.
Sorry, Steve. We were talking a little bit about Wales and Toshak and whatever before. Great to hear those stories from Ali. What's your thoughts on Toshak? In terms of, I suppose, his position, I suppose, in Cardiff and sport and folklore.
I think his role in bringing Wales to the position they got to in 2016 can't be understated, because the way he brought players through, the fact that Chris Gunter got as many chat caps as he did, is down to the fact he introduced young players like him very, very early on, I think. Obviously he was a hero when he left Cardiff. A lot of people, there's the story, of course, the amount of people who didn't watch Cardiff City anymore after Toshak went to Liverpool, soured somewhat with what he did going to the team whose name I'm not going to mention, 40 miles to the west. But of course, he did always say he wanted to come back and be manager at Cardiff, but the powers to be at Cardiff didn't want him at the time for whatever reason. So the story could have been different. But I think, yeah, come back to his position on Wales. I think he started something that others were able to carry on.
So thank you, Steve. So I mean, it's a bit of an unusual show tonight, actually, because obviously there's a game tomorrow, but City aren't playing. It's at our stadium. Wales are playing. Looks like Wales may well have blown it, but I'll just put that one out there. And so it's kind of a we're in the middle rather. We will look forward to the City matches to come, but it's nice to talk about that as well. One of the things I was going to ask you, Ali, was about favorite Cardiff City players, and I was thinking about this earlier, and I kind of picked a top three fairly straightforward. Funny enough, if I was asked to name my all-time favorite 11 for City, Toshak wouldn't be in it. He just seems, he was great,
No,
but I haven't got that emotional attachment to him,
No, man. I mean, I can barely remember watching him. I was.
You're younger than me, young man.
I was 11 or 10 or 11. I was 11 when I went to my first game. I just started high school, and I was given a free ticket to a Wales under-18s game. When the Canton stand had benches, so that's where we were in the Canton. And it was the first time I saw these, men sleeping off hangovers, basically, while the football is on, and men swearing and smoking and whatnot. It was kind of, that kind of drew me to this kind of arena. And then we found every way to sneak into Ninian Park possible for a child, including having friends, because we were local, Grangetown boys. We had friends who lived in the street behind the ground, and what people don't realise is that there's like a 30-foot drop from the Grange end into their back gardens. But one of the dads had rigged up a ladder for us, and so the ladder dropped into the toilet, where unfortunately, but it meant we could get in for free. And then we also got into the Ninian when they closed the Grange end and moved everyone to the Ninian stand. We got through, because my dad worked for the railways, so we managed to find a way through the railway tracks and across. So it was kind of my sort of, when I look back and think of the players that I remember from the Phil Dwyer, was always like kind of a regular. I was just remembering, players. There was the ones I remember, like the Buchanans and Tony Evans and Pontin, and
we were talking about Keith from earlier.
Yeah, they're kind of etched in my brain. What is quite funny though is, obviously as a young kid, and often in the boys' enclosure in the Grange end, you see them as larger than life. And when you meet them, I thought Tony Evans was 6'5".
Yeah,
I had no idea he was a little titchy, But I think that's the best part of childhood, isn't it? Those memories of being elevated the way they are.
Well, a similar thing happened to me at City when I first met Don Murray, and Don Murray, he was central defender. I assumed he was a giant. I was way taller than Don Murray.
Yeah.
You just really look up to them in kind of all ways, don't you?
When City played in the Carling Cup final against Liverpool, and they have a tradition at Wembley of inviting a tannoy announcers from both clubs to do a little stint, kind of thing.
Of course, yeah.
And they had us there, and Liverpool came out to do their pre-match warm-up, and Bellamy was playing for them at the time, and he came straight over to say hello, because he saw me in a City tracksuit and a couple of others, and then Steven Gerrard walked past, and I couldn't believe how small Steven Gerrard was.
Wow.
Compared to like this stature or whatever, and then you realise he's not small. It's just the rest of this squad are tiny, whatever. I couldn't believe how small and thin Premier Division players were. You know, they were like greyhounds.
Yeah, it's probably a good analogy.
Like not an ounce of fat on them.
We got a comment coming in from Mickey Villam, which I'll go to Steve with next, where people are really enjoying hearing your stories, Ali. But the thing he's just said then about Stephen Gerrard, when Kavanagh, Graham Kavanagh came on the phone in, because all the players used to come on, as you might remember, but now it's just not our show, it's every show, it's just everything's changed. So they used to come on, and he told this great story of when he first went to play for Wigan, I think it was. He bumped into Stephen Gerrard in a supermarket car park, and they both had their kids with them, So hello, how are you? Nice and welcome and nice to see you and all that. Next game, right? It was up against Liverpool. Gerrard battered him straight away. Bang. Yeah. So, and that's that's the way it is, isn't it? Yeah. Steve, I'll come to you with this one. Mickey Villan. Hi, Mickey. Someone we think we all know. Favorite 3 players. I'll run these past you, Steve. Buchanan, Evans, funny enough. 2 of which Ali just mentioned. Buchanan, Evans, and Stant.
Interesting. Evening, Mickey. All great players. Best 3 players. I'd say mine. I'd start off with Brian Clark early on for me.
Oh, good.
Robert Earnshaw. And Robert Earnshaw. The goals that he scored, and I have to come back to probably he played in the first ever Cardiff City game I saw in 1972. Absolute hero, Phil Dwyer. I go that those would be my 3 favourite Cardiff City players of all time.
As soon as we started it, go on, Ali.
I'd say, do you know what? Robert Earnshaw has always been my favourite Cardiff City player. Not just because of his performances, because of him as a person. I've never met a player so generous as Rob. Always the last to leave when he's giving autographs. Make sure that everyone get. I just really like the guy, whatever, as well as as a human being, as well as a footballer. Phil Dwyer, without a shadow of a doubt. I'd have to say, just for the way he developed, was Ramsey. I had the pleasure of announcing Ramsey's entrance into football at Ninian Park, as the youngest ever player. Yeah. And as I announced it, I was looking out the door at John Toshak, and you could see how seething he was that Ramsey was making. I mean, he was really angry that Ramsey was making his debut to break his record.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure he never got over. He didn't like that at all, But to think that first 10-minute appearance by Ramsey, where everyone was screaming at him, he had the ball in defence, and everyone was screaming at him to just kick it into touch because we were winning the game. Yeah, and he didn't, and he just kept hold of it until he could get a pass, and then he had a standing ovation. And you thought, this kid is special, he's going to go places. And to see what he's done now is bizarre, isn't it? That he's come back and that win against Swansea was just something else, So I mean, that's why Ramsey would, I'd say, take the 3rd spot.
Okay, so I was with you on Phil Dwyer is my all-time favorite Cardiff City player. Full stop. Just absolutely adore everything about Phil Dwyer. And I would certainly, Ernie would be in there. But my 3rd one is Wits. I think they're the 3 because Wits is
I was going to say Steve as well that Wits is I felt bad about leaving him out of my 3 because if you give me 4, he would have been my 4th. But it's good that the 3 of us all have 2 the same.
It's interesting, isn't it? Yeah, how we
I was laugh with Wits in that when he passed away, God rest his soul. So many people came out of the way. I knew Wits, I knew this, I knew that, and do you know what? All the years that I worked there and Wits was there, he was as quiet as a mouse too. I mean, footballers knew Wits because those were, that's the environment he was in. And people talking about his sense of humour and this, that, and the other. But outside of that, he was. I mean, I just found him a really nice guy, but really quiet, very unassuming, and certainly not somebody to sort of befriend everybody
No.
around him. He was a lot more cautious than that,
Yeah, he just
But
kind of got on with it, didn't he? Really?
yeah, and I mean, one of the first players not to celebrate a goal, just to get on with it, kind of like,
Yeah.
he just walked through, didn't he? He scored, just walk away, like,
Yeah.
it was nothing, and there was something I loved about the guy, was not just his skill, but he just had this nonchalance about playing football, and it was like, that song epitomizes him. He does what he likes,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
he was,
Yeah. I mean, and Steve with Peter Whittingham, he's been on. He was over the 20 years. He was on the show a couple of times. Obviously, Phil Dwyer was on a few times, and for both of them, Steve, it was how I would have loved to have, chatted with him one more time, sort of thing. It was just really
Yeah,
tragic,
yeah.
particularly with
It's
Waits.
always
Was such a
it's always
shock,
the way.
wasn't it? Such a
Yeah,
terrible shock,
absolutely,
wasn't it?
absolutely. But the memories he's left us with, I remember one of the maddest goal celebrations I was in was when he scored that free kick at Leicester in that playoff semi-final. And I think I mentioned it on here before. 118th minute in the League Cup final, he put two corners right under the bar. The first one we nearly scored from, I think it was Kite managed to head it over the bar, and then he put the next corner right under the bar again after 118 minutes of playing. That was such a level
yeah.
of skill that he had, absolute wand. And the goals he scored, and the hat trick against Wolves the season we went up to the Premier League the first time. I remember that as well. He's left such fantastic memories, but he's such a terrible loss.
What about somebody like Jason Kumar, Steve? Was he wasn't with us that long, but there was something special about him as well, wasn't there?
He wasn't. I remember again him coming on in that super sub. We were 1-0 down at home against Leeds in his first game. He came on and he'd equalised within minutes of coming on and set up the final. Yeah, again, and some he had another wonder of a free kick. He was a fantastic player. Just a pity we didn't get him earlier on and permanently more earlier on as well.
It was
And
Dave Jones had this talent, didn't he, for getting these players who were super talented but had a flaw,
yeah, uh,
and
yeah,
Jason was one of those players, didn't he? Wasn't he? And it was a shame really, because what a career he could have had, but then again, he might not have been the same type of player, But as you said, that goal was, and then his subsequent goals they were never sort of plain, were they? They were always incredible goals.
Yeah.
and
Do you remember
seems
the one
what
Ali against Ipswich? Yeah, as a televised game, and he took the ball into the penalty area and he fell over and he got up and he put it in. I was just leaping around madly when he scored that one.
Prior to Jason Kumas, I can remember when Gary. Do you remember when Gary O'Neill came?
yeah, he was good for us too.
Yeah.
And he was
Numerous
just there
yeah,
on loan, wasn't he? And suddenly we
yeah,
saw what a quality midfielder could do, or whatever. When we weren't playing
Yeah,
hoofball kind of
yeah,
thing.
yeah.
yeah,
Well,
yeah,
with Dave Jones, I mean, we probably played even now. I'd say probably amongst the best football, in terms of technically, I think football that we played.
yeah.
And that season when
Actually, you've
Wits was
just
just
reminded me,
scoring goals
Steve.
for fun, wasn't he?
So you've just reminded me, Steve. There was one occasion. It's on YouTube, obviously. Everything's on YouTube. But when I think we played Sheffield United, and there was a passing movement, just bang, 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 bang down the pitch, resulting in Wits putting it in finally. And apparently the assistant stroke linesman got in trouble for putting his flag underneath his arm and clapping the goal,
Ah,
because it was the passing and movement ending up with Wits putting it in was absolutely fantastic.
How
actually,
did you
another
how did you get on with Dave Jones, Steve?
didn't really know him. I didn't ever have any kind of relationship with him. I think he was known for being just a little bit diffident, a little bit detached. I read his book, No Smoke,
All
No
right, yeah.
Fire, which is kind of
Yeah, I've
interesting.
got that as well.
It's a funny thing though, Ali, because you ask about Dave Jones. It's there's another scouser for you. That kind of contradiction between that lovely football and the personality went with it.
Yeah.
Including that
Well,
fabulous "have a lovely trip home" comment.
he banned me from the tunnel for a season, and that was because I'd asked. It was quite strange. I was taking a 12. I was given permission by the club. A friend had asked, could their kid come in on their birthday just to have a look round, and they said, yeah, no problem. So I took this 12-year-old through to the to the pitch. Came back through, and as I was coming back through, one of the stewards, and he still works there, said, "Do you know Dave Jones is in his room there?" give him a knock, and you'll have a photo probably. So I did, knocked the door. Dave Jones came, yeah, no problem, took the photo. And about 20 minutes later, I had Wayne Nash come screaming into the tannoy room. What have you done to upset Dave Jones? I said, what do you mean? I only asked for a photo. Well, as a result of that, I was banned from the tunnel then. So obviously, I still had to go onto the pitch at half time. So in order for me to get onto the pitch from the tannoy room, which is 3 floors up, I had to go down the stairs, out of the stadium, walk across to the grandstand and walk through down the tunnel onto the pitch, and then do the reverse to go. And there was often times at the end of half time when I'd walk out into the car park and think, should I just jump in the car and go home? If we were losing at half time, I was thinking, should I just jump in the car?
Yeah. I tell you what, Ali, it's a this one comment's coming in here now. It's a really, really weird thing when you're an announcer for the club you love, isn't it?
Oh,
because,
absolutely. Yeah.
Phil Suarez said to me, bless him, Phil Suarez said to me, never work for the club, son. Never work for the club. And I can kind of see, and I'm sure you can as well, see what he means with that, you know.
Yeah, I think you always have to remember that the reason people are going there is for the football. They're not going for you, you know. And now all I felt was I wanted to try to do something that was a little bit different in terms of I guess crowd participation. You know, as it was slightly Americanized, I guess, but to add a little bit of more sort of humor and comedy and whatnot.
Which you did.
And that's really, you know. But then I was lucky to have, you know, Sam Hammam as the owner. Do you know what I mean?
We've got to talk about Sam.
And Sam basically said, he said to me, I want you to be crazy like me. I want you to be my personality on the tannoy. And Sam used to come up to the tannoy box, believe it or not. On St. George's Day, he came up to me once and said, it's St. George's Day, Ali. Let's do something to wind the English up. And I said, you can't do that. We'll have a riot. And I'm having to tell the owner of the club.
I know, yeah.
You know, to sort of rein it in a little bit, you know. But it was fun times, I guess, you know, with Sam.
Did he call you baby as well?
Always, Ali baby.
Yeah. So he called me once. He said, Stevie baby, and when he was asking me to do, Steve, you'll love this, yeah. He wanted, and well, actually, was anything about this in the game now with, you know, the guys on the snare drums and whatever at the back is kind of nodding towards it. But he wanted every time there was a corner, he went going off every time there was a corner, you know. I said, I don't think you can do that, Sam, you know.
It was the only time, I gotta be honest, the only time with Sam, he kept encouraging me to bring my kids to my daughters were, they're in their late 20s now, but at the time they were toddlers. And I brought my kids, they were, you know, I think they were about 6 and 4 at the time. And Sam said, come on, I'll give you a race on the pitch to one of my kids. Yeah. And they, you know, we all knew Sam had a heart condition or whatever, and he still did it, and he still run halfway across the pitch to race my daughter, and he was trying to beat her, and she wouldn't have it. Like she was I ain't gonna be beaten by no granddad, whatever. She didn't know who Sam Hammam was, or whatever. But the guy, I mean, his face was red. We all thought he was going to keel over, but he was so committed to the football club. I mean, he attended every single game, didn't he? Whether it was a kids' game to, you know, the first team, he went, you know, the amount of work he travelled all over South Wales, kind of bringing publicity to the club and whatnot. And I mean, my favourite sort of memories are kind of, you remember we played Leeds, for example, and watching. I had a grandstand view of Sam going toe to toe with David O'Leary in the reception area, and Sam had that brilliant kind of little man syndrome kind of thing where he's standing there and he's telling him, and as soon as David O'Leary gets a bit leery or whatever, in steps Mac.
Oh God! Yeah,
in steps his bodyguard, kind of thing. Yeah. And Sam then stands behind Mac, and still giving it to him.
Yeah,
you know, but he was kind of fearless, Sam. That's what I liked about him. He he didn't care. He just, and I thought he brought a lot of fun to football, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, he did obviously. Steve Salmon, we did occasionally go a little bit too far. I think there was one stage we were going to take an elephant to the QPR match at the Championship playoff, but that one didn't quite come off. What's your perspective on Sam as a kind of a character, from the fan perspective, Steve?
He was. I think he came in, and obviously there's some well documented problems with what Sam did. But I agree with what Ali said. Can I come back to you, Ali? Actually, I do remember something I must compliment you on. Was when they played Leicester, and I can't remember the second player, the second name was, but they had a player called Elvis, and you announced it when he was substituted that Elvis is leaving the building. Absolutely, and then I'm not going to do it, but you did the Elvis thing after it. I'll always remember that, Ali. Thank you very much for that. I
But
love the way you brought humour to it.
do you remember though it did backfire? He scored.
There's some other comments coming in. I'm just going to go to them as well. Chris Hughes Jones. It's nice to do a show like this, by the way, where it just goes off on a bit of a tangent. It's nice. Chris Hughes Jones. I remember when Witts scored a hat trick, and Dave Jones said he was too shy to ask for the ball. Going back to what you were saying, Ali, about his personality.
Yeah.
And then sticking with Dave Jones, Jeff Della Cruz. Hiya, Jeff. And I was only thinking about the same thing, Jeff, earlier, and I'll ask Ali his opinion on this. I'll never forgive Jones for not playing Ramsey for the start in the cup final. I mean, we will never know. But do you think we might have, because they weren't that great, Portsmouth, were they? Do you think we might have maybe made more of it if we started with Ramsey?
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I mean, he brought so much excitement to the team and to the crowd as well, and even when he came on, he made a huge difference, But I mean, look, it was a bad mistake by our keeper or whatever. We had a goal disallowed when Leuven scored, and
Yep.
And it was just one of them. For me, it was a horrible. I mean, we turned up, me and the Portsmouth announcer to that game, and the Portsmouth announcer made a beeline to me and said, "You're going first." And I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Oh, because there's like a little bit of a slot each, And I said, "Oh, we haven't had a running order yet." And we went to a meeting, and the running order said the Portsmouth guy goes first, and then me. So he then tries to tell the guy who's producing the FA Cup final, that we're going to go second because we're the older club. And I'm what on earth is this guy on? Anyway, he was put in his place by Sky Sports, who said, no, you follow this routine. And it's just so happened the actual announcer of the Wembley Stadium is Paul Burrell, who's the Arsenal announcer, who's become a good friend of mine. He's really, really nice. He's the guy who's the announcer who's that non-league club that we keep playing in the Midlands?
I know you mean playing pre-season friendlies. We played him in the FA Cup once.
Yeah, we played.
I can't remember what called either.
He's there, and that's right.
Yeah,
he's their announcer. And he, when I first met him at Arsenal, he invited me to Arsenal to have a look around, and great. At Highbury, he was fantastic. And then I said to him, "How long have you been an Arsenal fan?" He goes, "I'm not. I'm a Birmingham City fan." But even more so, he's a fan of his local team, and he does more for them, Yeah, and so nice. He's the announcer for England and for the FA Cup. So he's Wembley's announcer, currently. The Portsmouth announcer, when it came to the Portsmouth bit, he did his bit, and then it came to my bit, it was incredible. The reaction from the Cardiff fans when they said, now is Ali or whatever, everyone cheered. And then I obviously made it into a kind of a political speech that you're not here. Just remember, Cardiff fans, each one of you is not here just representing your town or your street. You're here representing your nation. And everyone is like at some sort of political rally. Yeah. And he then decides to throw his Portsmouth flag in my face. Really? And shout, and try to grab the microphone off my hand.
Wow.
At which point, Paul shouts at him and says, "Leave it out." And then when we'd finished our slots, he turned round to me, the Paul, the England announcer, and said, "Right, well, you could stay here. You can get out." He kicked
Hey,
him out of the. He kicked him out of the.
wow,
I said, "Where's he going to go?" Because he's going to have to go back in with his own fans somewhere. But I'm not
really?
having him
Wow,
here
wow.
because he said it's happened. It happened with the Blackpool game as well. And he said, if I can't know that the people standing next to me can't control their emotions, then they've got to be nowhere near this microphone, And it was it was bizarre, So the whole game was a kind of uh, bizarre thing. And the one thing I remember about that announcer was he kept going on about he's a former player's nephew, Pearson. Stuart Pearson, who's played for Man United.
Oh yeah,
He was his nephew.
oh, fair enough.
Yeah. And when I asked him, "Oh, have you ever played football professionally?" He did say, "I once had a trial." Oh yeah.
But
We got-
you wanted to manage the club. You can't talk.
Well, that was my original letter, wasn't it? Rather than a
Yeah,
tannoy
yeah,
answer.
yeah.
Yeah, that was.
We got a question for you in a second, which I come back in a second. This Chris again. Thanks, Chris, for that. I wanted to ask you, Ali. I'll come back to Steve in a bit, but it's a nice. Hopefully, Steve, you're enjoying the conversation with
I'm
Ali
sorry, I was
as well as I am. No,
in the limelight here.
no. I wanted to ask you firstly. Can you tell me about your special experience when you had your COVID jab? Because that's quite a good story.
You talking to me?
Yeah, the person who
Oh,
jabbed
sorry.
you.
I went for my latest COVID jab on Saturday, and lo and behold, as I'm sat in a queue and being called to the next sort of available person, I'm come face to face with Howard Jacobson, Joe Jacobson's dad, who's been a friend of mine for years. Since Joe's been playing for the club, basically. Now I asked him, Joe, I think was 19 when he left the club, or he was playing for the club, and I said, "Oh, how old is Joe?" Out of interest, he said 37.
Wow,
My
wow.
God, a lifetime
Yeah,
has
yeah,
gone past. But no, me and Howard go back because, bizarrely, because he's Jewish and I'm Muslim, we've always had this kind of strange friendship, I guess, over the
yeah,
years. Funny enough, I was saying to him, we used to be able to talk about, coming from sort of different backgrounds. Lots of my friends may have different political views to me, but we were able to talk, and I felt like these days it feels tribal. It feels like people only stick with their own, people who only think the same as them, and therefore it gets opinions get polarized very much.
yeah.
And he was telling me about the conflict in Gaza at the moment, and the backlash Joe is getting for being Jewish. The abuse he's getting online and whatnot. And it's crazy, isn't it, to think like, well, a kid born in Cardiff is being abused for something that he has no control over or any connection to,
Yeah.
which is happening somewhere else in the world.
So I want to kind of respond to that in a slightly different way, and I'll come to Steve with that. But one of the nicest things, what is the title of the senior Muslim in the UK, Ali? I can't remember what's this
There isn't
title.
as such. I mean, there's a Muslim Council of Britain who
Right.
claim to have been sort of representative, but I've never voted for them. Have they ever had elections? They're just
No,
it's like the board of Jewish deputies or whatever.
no. But
People come up with these names, and they're really just think tanks, who
yeah. But all I was going to say was one of the nicest things I've seen during this whole conflict was a conversation between the chief rabbi and the senior representative of the
oh
Muslim
right,
community in the UK, and it was just a really beautiful exchange. And
yeah,
they both said, they both described each other as friends, shook each other's hands, and it was lovely. Steve, I want to come on to something which sort of relates a bit to what Ali's talking about, and that's the thing with Simpson and Luthra. The story which got out about that. It's a
Yeah,
bizarre story, all in all, really. But it's shocking, really, isn't it? That kind of thing, could be going on between two footballers playing for the same football club on some sort of away jaunt. Just crazy stuff, isn't it?
absolutely, absolutely, 100%. And I don't think Simpson's come out of it at all well. Whether
Well,
he'll find another
he's
club,
ruined, isn't he? He's ruined, I
yeah,
think.
absolutely,
Mm.
absolutely. Yeah, he couldn't stay on. His position was completely untenable. It's amazing how we've had these players who have made their position untenable. We'll have to see if he pops up somewhere else. But at the moment, it doesn't look very good for him at all.
Your thoughts on that one, Ali?
I found it really bizarre. I have to be honest. I mean, when I read about it, and I actually read the report as well. Of the so he had been out the night before, gotten drunk. He said something, and even though apparently his girlfriend is
that's the thing, isn't it?
Asian, I, I I have to be honest. In this case, I would give him. I would have given him the benefit of the doubt. I would have made him go on a diversity course or whatever. But I don't. I think it was out of character. It sounded like out of character rather than this is his typical viewpoint, And that's where like I said, it feels like the FAW have this thing about, oh no, we're going to come down hard on this. But in this case, there didn't seem to be any room, for manoeuvre, and also it was reported after the FAW had come and given a talk to the players about reported abuse. Now that was 2 weeks, so you don't know in that 2 weeks what had happened between those two guys. Had Simpson tried to approach him several times, and the guy had said, "No, I don't want to talk to you." So I mean, I can see it as a person, from an ethnic minority. Of course, I, would abhor any kind of abuse in that respect. But also, as I said, reading the report, it just didn't feel like this is a racist. I'm reading.
And from what I can understand, they were out till like 3 or 4 in the morning, and this is breakfast is like 6:30 or something. So he's probably still drunk, But
these are young men, these are young men who say stupid. I mean, that's why I keep thinking I'm 60 years old now. I mean, some of the stupid things I said when I was in my 20s, I would, would be horrified to think that that's followed me for the rest of my life. But in this age of social media, and unfortunately, the guy's going to be vilified for maybe something he's not,
Yeah, well, we haven't got that long left in the show, but it kind of reminds me that it takes me back to the Marky Mackay stuff as well, and how that all came out through basically someone going through all of his phone calls, and everything else. Chris Hughes Jones, thanks for all the comments tonight. Can you, Ali, briefly remind us of the story of the songs for the West Ham game?
Oh, that was that was quite. A lot of people talk about the Steptoe and Son, but they forget, that there was a whole list of songs that night. I mean, we started off with that classic there may be trouble ahead. Well, while there's moonlight and moonlight. Yeah. Only because I'd heard that they were talking, rather than fighting, they were saying, "No, let's dance," instead of that was the terminology the hooligans were using.
Oh,
so
yeah.
I put "Let's Face the Music and Dance" as one of the songs, and there was I'm just trying to think the others, but there was a whole list. Basically, I'd called West Ham's announcer and said, "I'm going to play all these songs or whatever. Would any of them really offend?" And he said no. So I just did, and to be honest, it was the Sun. There was a Sun reporter there that night, and he was the one who made this big deal about he couldn't find, there was nothing interesting to write about the match. Yeah. West Ham had been beaten 4-1, I think it was, which was a great result for us. So he was just looking for some sort of negative thing to write. And Sam, God bless him, he was straight behind me, and said, no, this is, and then the Sun went to the directors from West Ham who attended the game looking for a comment, and they said that it was the only thing that made them smile that night, because their team certainly didn't. And just to piss the Sun off a little bit, excuse my language, West Ham's directors invited me to the rematch and gave me a tour of the stadium.
Oh, wow. That's cool.
It was great, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, these days you could have played Rag and Bone Man, I suppose. That would kind of work as well, wouldn't it? Jeff Dela Cruz comes through. Best announcement, greatest announcement I heard. He's talking about you, Ellie, I'm sure. At Forest, we were leading at halftime. Wales Egg were playing England and they were hammering Wales by 30 points. And so the City fans were told got the biggest cheer of the day. So, you enjoyed.
I got the most trouble I got, to be honest, of all the announcements. I mean, I used to have fun with the announcements, but most of the trouble I got was instead it was calling Tottenham Gareth Bale. So honestly, every time I say, because the result was like it was always like Aston Villa 2, Gareth Bale 3. Or every Tottenham result, and often you look at them and think Gareth Bale was one of the scorers or whatever. But that got me into more trouble than anything else. Was they didn't mind most of the other stuff.
Just while you're on, just give us the titles of the books.
I think the English book I did was called "Was It Something I Said?"
Okay.
I think, and the Welsh one I can't remember, to be honest. It's sorry, it's not off the top of my head. I couldn't think what it is.
But it sounds like it might make a good Christmas stocking
Oh
filler
yeah,
for a bit of fun. Yeah.
Always available. Plenty of copies.
Steve, we're getting towards the end here, so we'll just move it on a little bit to Cardiff City. We are talking about Cardiff City, but I mean in the here and now sort of thing. So looking forward to the weekend, and get Preston, and we get the West Brom game. Any thoughts on any changes after the last one, Steve?
I'd like to bounce back, and I hope that Errol's criticism of the subs who came on in their role against Norwich will have a positive reaction from them, because previously both Colwill and Ollie Tanner have turned games round. I'd like to think that. Well, I'm going to go. I know you're going to ask for the scores shortly. I'd like to think we can come back with back-to-back wins the next 2 games.
That's a pretty brave one. What do you think, Ali?
I think so too. It's been a pattern, isn't it? We do 3 or 4 games brilliantly, and then we run out of a little bit of steam. But to be honest, when Ramsey got injured, I started thinking, oh God, I did start thinking like, what's going to. And I've been pleasantly surprised by the squad. Keon Atet should be fully fit again with a bit of luck, and he definitely adds a different element. Colwell, I've always criticised him. Always thought he's like doesn't run around enough. But then every time I criticise him, he scores. So I kind of I resigned. My son loves him, And but I find being in the Canton, they're a little bit more cruder in their assessment of games and assessment of players compared to the Indian stand. So I'm always sort of holding back.
So I'm looking at the
come back to the original question, Steve. The original question, I wouldn't change the start. I wouldn't change the starting 11. The starting 11 seems to be fine. They can learn from what they did in the early part of the game against Norwich when we did concede a rather sloppy goal from the corner. The front 3, I think Carl and Grant, his first name on there. Mate's fine as well. If Josh Bowler's fine, I wouldn't change it. And again, come back to Siopis has been the game changer this season. I'd stick with the same starting 11. I'd definitely go for back-to-back wins next 2.
We're just looking at the Wales under-21 game as well, because Colwell started off on the bench, which is a bit of a surprise actually for that one. And Wales managed to pull a goal back, but they were 2 down. But it's Cian Ashford has scored, so that's nice to see. Do you want to give us a match prediction for you're going win-win then, Steve? Are you genuinely going win-win?
Yeah, genuinely, I'm going for 2-1 for both.
Wow, Ali?
I think by a goal against Preston. And I'm hopeful of a 2-0 win against West Brom at home.
They're going quite well as well, aren't they?
Yeah, but I think we do better against teams who want to play football. It's the it's the teams that last season we used to park the bus, didn't we? And it's those kind of teams we find it difficult to break down this time around.
So we'll see. There was an interesting comment from Carlton Palmer as well on Colin Grant saying he reckons he'll go back to West Brom and do well. But if we had more time, I'd have asked you maybe there's any possibility whether we're going to sign, whether we could think about signing players like that when we got money in January. It's possible, I suppose. We might see that. I think of the loanees, he's either one probably most likely we'd go for.
I bought Colin Grant a coffee. He was behind me in Starbucks a couple of months ago, and so I paid for his coffee. And but unbeknown to him, Jack Alnwick was behind him, and he didn't. No, not Jack Alnwick. It was the other goalkeeper from last season, Allsop.
Oh yeah, oh,
He
he
was
didn't buy him
behind
one, did
him,
he?
and he didn't buy Allsop a coffee.
Fair enough. I'm glad we had a story at Starbucks because it takes us back to the perennial. You know, I bumped into Gareth Bale outside Greg stories, isn't it? So that was nice.
But I'd only bought it for Callan Grant because Jack Alnwick bought one for me. My son was in the car, run out to get a selfie with Jack, and when we got to the front, they said, "Oh, Jack's already paid for your coffee." So
Nice.
I thought I'd return the favour when I saw Callan Grant behind me a couple of weeks later. But like I said, and then I found out the following day from the same lady that he hadn't paid for Allsop, who was behind him,
Yeah.
and Allsop was kicking off at her.
Oh, God. Anyway, really nice show. Really, just took it all in a different direction. Loved to chat with you, Ali, again, and the stories. And thank you, Steve, and have a safe trip back from the Falklands.
Thank you.